In this interview, I sit down with Shiva Sharifi. We talk about the process of group coaching as well as the challenges of moving from model to photographer. This is TWiP. All right, Shiva Sharifi, how is it going? How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me on TWiP.
It is good. It's good to have you on TWiP. We were just talking off camera a little bit and kind of going through the things that we wanted to share with the TWiP audience, and there is a ton of cool stuff that we need to talk about. Before we dive into that, give us a little introduction or a glimpse into who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay. So I am a part-time professional photographer. I've been shooting for about 18 years. I started with film back in '97, and I was shooting landscape photography with film for a few years there, and started going out to some events, the Renaissance Fair with my friends, and was shooting people and wasn't very good at composing images of people. I wasn't impressed with the work that I was doing compared to the landscape work. So I ended up actually, with the encouragement of my friends at that time, I got into modeling actually to be a better photographer. So I became a model photographer. In 2001, I started modeling. I converted probably to digital around 2003, 2004 with my photography, about the same time as most others did. Yeah. And continued to do model photography until about 2008. I retired from modeling. I probably took a break for about the year 2009, and then I've been solely pursuing my photography since 2010.
That's cool. I love that because, you know, I talk to a lot of photographers about what, you know, sort of their origin story and how they got into this stuff. And I love talking to photographers that started with film because I don't know, for some reason it seems like, no offense to the people that didn't start with film, but it seems like the people that started with film, you and me literally started with ankle weights on, but we didn't know we had ankle weights on at the time. Do you feel like the film experience of your background has made you a better photographer today?
I do. I think it does contribute a lot to how I have my vision with my work. I mean, I do really like the accessibility of the LCD screen on the back of the digital. That is so beneficial and helpful, and having that immediacy, you know, with the digital work. But on the other hand, the thing that I kind of miss, and as part of actually my teaching process, is kind of bringing back the psychology of how film was limiting, because you only had like 24, 36 images per roll. And so it wasn't, you know, that spray and pray, and then you're going through culling like 1,000 images from a shoot. Right. You know, you maybe shot 3 or 4 rolls. And so I think that was a special part of the film era where, you know, your intention was a little bit more limited. So you were much more careful about what you were doing before you clicked and pressed that shutter.
It was expensive, right? I mean, yes. Back then, every time you click the shutter, you could do the math, and it would equate to a couple of, you know, some change. And so you were much more considered in your photography back then, I think, which is good and bad. I think, you know, having digital and the flexibility of almost limitless photography or a limitless roll of film in your camera that you can then also preview. That's good too, but then the restrictions also tend to make us, you know, hone our craft a little bit better, right?
Yeah, there's definitely pros and cons. And actually, it's funny because I just picked up like 2 rolls of film last month, and I put my first roll of film into my old Minolta camera like last week. Nice. And I think that it's really good to have a balance between I mean, if you have a film camera, pick it up and use it again, because it's good to have, you know, a different focus. It's one of the things I started doing also is like getting back and kind of to street photography, because it inspires my projects for my model photography and stuff like that. So it's varying things up, I think, is really good.
Well, let's talk about the model stuff. I want to transition into today, but I want to talk about you're a retired model, and it's kind of obvious that you were a model because you look awesome.
Thank you.
So, but now you've taken those skills that, you know, well, you tell me, what was the transitional path from being in front of the camera and making those, helping the photographer make those photos, to becoming the photographer that's actually creating the images?
So one of the best things about being in front of the camera was I think a lot of photographers, I think every photographer should get a photographer friend and book a portrait session with them. Because, and even it's just one-time experience or something like that, you all need a really good avatar, headshot picture of yourself to, I think, have anyways for your social media or your business cards or wherever you would utilize them. But getting in front of the camera and having that big glass lens that staring at you can be really, really intimidating. And I think until you go through that experience, and then, as a model, you just keep going through it over and over again until it just becomes really comfortable. And that's what all the models and the beginner and amateur level models are going through and cultivating that comfort level and becoming professionals. So I think that for me, the biggest takeaway was understanding when I'm behind the camera, what that person is feeling in front of the camera.
Empathy.
And, and then also the other huge thing is good models have lighting awareness. And so as a photographer, you're beginning to understand your subject in front of the camera, whether it's a portrait session with a client or you're working with a model on one of your projects, and you can see where her skill level is at and help guide and direct her with posing. Because that's what my big takeaway was. Because I was a model, I'm really good at coaching models as well in front of my camera and giving posing direction and guidance and knowing all these angles that are really good to present to the camera.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a unfair advantage, I think, that you
and I do kind of work it a lot and enjoy it.
Exploit it. Yeah, why not? You got to work with your natural resources, So.
Yeah, and that's part of what I teach. I try and help teach, my male photographer friends, is to kind of have some empathy from that perspective. So I like to tell those stories to the males that I'm working with, so that they can kind of just get that viewpoint a little bit and take some of that consideration into their own stuff.
Yeah. Well, let's transition the conversation into the present now. So now you're an accomplished photographer, and we'll link to your work in the YouTube description for this video, as well as the blog post for this. But you're you know your stuff, clearly. Just listening to you talk, we can tell that you know what you're talking about as a photographer. But now you've taken that a step further. Now you're coaching people. Tell me about the coaching side of Shiva.
Okay. So I have my personal or booking brand is all Shiva, but I started a side project called Dynamic Beauty Photography. And so that project is model photography focused. And I picked the name Dynamic Beauty because to me, even though there is the beauty genre in photography where you're focused on headshots and the makeup and beautiful skin, to me, actually, any photo shoot involved with a female model is beautiful, whether it's her in the landscape or it's fashion. So I like to just kind of do that. And then I was playing around with the idea of I wanted to make sure that what I was presenting to my audience and the people that would be attending was that they were going to get a very large variety of different concepts and the ability to create content in various locations, because I wasn't going to be just in one studio. I wanted to network with a lot of photographer partners that I have within the Bay Area, both up in San Francisco or in Silicon Valley or even outside of the area with their studios, and then also amazing locations outdoors. And so,
and then the subject matter that you're actually shooting is what is it? I know it's models, but what kind of model photography are we talking about here?
So there's lots of different projects. One of the things that we do is just outdoor environmental portraits, so that you are working with the natural sunlight. You can use it as backlight, using your strobe or speed lights for fill light, and getting practice with your equipment and getting more comfortable with your gear. And that way you can also be more prepared when you're working with clients to do portrait photography for events, whether you're into weddings or just doing outdoor portrait sessions. We are also doing stuff. One of my big kicks right now is working with ballet dancers. Those are very, very popular because women who are in dance move a little bit differently than models, because poses in fashion are more, different than, dancing and stuff like that. Yeah. So we're doing that kind of stuff. We're doing boudoir style work with lingerie and in the bedroom environments in different locations. We're doing fine art nudes in the landscape. I don't personally care or have too much interest in fine art nude in the studio because for me personally, just on the white or a black backdrop is not so telling, although you can create some interesting shapes and stuff that way. And I will probably do that if there's a level of interest. But the focus of the workshops is to help people that are beginning and intermediate to understand how to approach models. I'm there in the background to kind of assist. Some people just come in because they just wanted to create content and they like the model that I have presented for that session, so they just come for the model. Yeah. Other ones I'm getting feedback. They're saying that they really appreciate the forum because I'm trying to create a community where we're discussing more than just making pretty images, although pretty images are okay. I mean, I've been working on them for many, many years. I'm kind of at that next level now, I feel, where I want to take my work up a notch, and I want to help other people where they're at to take their work up a notch with what the intentions are of the work, not just I took a picture of a pretty lady, but trying to get it to be a little bit more storytelling or a little bit more just unique and so that your style is diversified and it's kind of got its own signature without you seeing the person's watermark, but you can tell that person had that photo. It belongs to them.
The sign is you don't even have to see the watermark and you're like, that kind of looks like a Shiva shot right there, right? That's what you're going for. So then with these workshops, this is fascinating because I want to dive into just sort of the superpowers that you have, or like we were saying, the unfair advantage that you have as a female conducting a workshop that I would assume is probably, a large percentage of your attendees are male, but then
yes,
there's
all of them have been.
Yeah, see, there you go.
I've had a few ladies join the group, and I think that they're watching, but I don't know. I had one email from a lady. She said that she just felt too intimidated to be in around the guys, and sorry to interrupt, but it was just brought up this thought is because I went through that back in 2003, 2004, 2005. And it was very interesting because I'd show up and the group of guys would look at me and go, what are you doing here? It's just like,
that's their own issues.
There.
That's their own issues to get through. But you as the ringleader, you've got this group of guys. You have to have a relatively strong personality, I would imagine, to even as a guy to wrangle a group of guys. But, as yourself, as a female, you have to have a strong personality to wrangle this group of guys. And then you layer on top of that the sort of the discomfort of shooting a nude or scantily clad model and sort of reconciling all that stuff and nervousness and egos and just weirdness. How do you manage that? That's got to be like, I don't know if I could do that. How do you do that?
Well, I, for one, because I'm speaking as a retired model that actually posed in this genre, I actually did a shoot way back. And this is one of my pride and joy moments, whereas I climbed up on the Palace of Fine Arts on a Friday at noon and like bore myself to the photographer and the rest of the people in the park below.
Nude? You did that? Wow.
Yes,
wow.
And so, I mean,
and how much jail time was involved with that?
Oh no, this was done very efficiently. When you do this kind of stuff, you do it within 10 minutes, right? You just like, you go in, you know what you want to capture ahead of time. And San Francisco's a lot more open about that stuff now compared to 15 years ago. It's interesting that I'm getting, from the model side, I'm getting it helps them to have another woman there to make the level of that energy of her just being around an entire group of men, carrying all. It makes her feel a lot more comfortable, and so she's able to display more confidence during the session, and in a way that I kind of balance the energy so that she can present her femininity and her, sexuality, not sexualization, but her sexuality in a safe space, because I'm kind of creating that environment for her. And the guys, I think, intuitively are understanding that I'm kind of doing that. And so they're grateful that I'm creating a space and an opportunity for them to create good content, because her expression is comfortable. She's, feeling comfortable. And so she's able to deliver it to the camera. And some of the other content I got is, interestingly enough, we did one this last weekend. And some of the guys are saying that they really enjoy having a female host. And I was surprised by this, because I kind of dissipate the competition between the male egos. And it's about there's not who's going to get the best shot. We're all trying to help each other get our best shot.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot less of that competition dynamic, which I have experienced, because I have, as a female photographer back in the day, when I was learning my first digital cameras, I'd go to the workshop sessions as well to see what these other people are doing. And I still go to some of the other local ones. I have friends that do them, and I like to go to theirs as well, and their male hosts and stuff like that. And I value what they're doing, and just checking out what everyone else is doing, because it's a collaboration is what I want to make it.
And how would you say this whole, as we record this, in July of 2018, this whole Me Too movement is in full swing. And, I would imagine that some of the genres of photography that are affected, or I know that some of the genres of photography are affected, are this one and other ones, right? So again, back to the unfair advantage. So how does that work? Do you find like that you have an increased influx of photographers that want to work through you as a female for validation to shoot this kind of photography, versus, a couple of years ago, they would have jumped on Model Mayhem, snagged a model, went to a hotel room and did the photos one-on-one? That could be dangerous these days, right? What do you think about that? That's
actually a really good question. And I don't know fully the answer to that yet, but I am seeing some of that to be true, actually. I think that there's a lot of photographers out there that are intimidated or just don't know what they want to create, or either one, don't know what they want to create, or two, they're intimidated approaching a woman and asking them to wear lingerie or disrobe or whatever the project might be. And so I think that they're coming to these workshops and mine in particular because of the more comfortable format. And so the other thing too, though, is I'm sorry, I'm having like three thoughts at once, and I'm trying to
it's a great question. I mean, and the other piece of that, while you're thinking through that, the other piece of it is the whole acronym GWC, right? Guy with camera.
Yes.
And for the folks that don't know it, it's this sort of organism that shows up in the shape of a dude with a camera, whose sole purpose is to gawk and be around naked or pretty women, and they use the camera as an excuse or a catalyst to do that. Have you seen any of that? I mean, I would imagine attaching a fee to a workshop kind of filters out that kind of seaweed.
So there's definitely, because I did do some research locally with what other workshops in my area were presenting and producing, and I definitely wanted to I actually vet all my models. They go through a vetting process where it's a very extensive, like, I want to develop rapport with her before I would ever present her in front of a group of 5 to 7 or 8 photographers, and make sure that she can kind of have the experience level to handle that dynamic. And for the photographers, I'm doing kind of the same thing. I mean, it's open to all, but if you're creating a discomfort in the community that I'm trying to generate, then I would probably not allow or I would not invite you to come back. I think that there is some actually models and even a couple photographers have told me that, I'm creating something that I want to be of a higher quality and higher caliber. And they are seeing that I'm having these higher caliber models that are really, really great for portfolio development. And I was very grateful for those compliments, because that's where I kind of want to keep the focus. Is very high end. So my price point is a little bit higher, but not by much. It's like maybe $20 to $30 is a higher price point.
But that's good.
I'm still being very fair.
And that's the whole point of, like,
so
that's why in our, like, in the TWiP Pro community that you're a member of, we have a very it's $4.99, right? So we have a very small price on there, and that's specifically designed to keep out the people that don't necessarily want to be there, that just want to come in and be rabble-rousers or disruptors, right? Right. So, yeah, the money's a great filter.
So, yes, I've definitely seen, you can kind of tell. I mean, it's just, you can tell by looking at pictures, right? And so you can see what kind of communities by the pictures they're posting in their groups. And you can see what kind of models they have. And, yes, there's something wrong with, practicing with beginner models on what you're doing, but I like to try and take it to the next level for everyone who's ready to be there, and working with more professional level models so that your portfolio jumps up to that professional level as well. Yeah. And so, like, I think it dissipates a lot of the guys that are doing group sessions. It's very obvious there's a few of them in the area that they book models to hang around pretty girls, and they've bought the gear to hang around pretty girls, and they're not really working on creating great content. And it's very obvious in just kind of the dynamic or the vibe that you get. I've actually attended them. We also get the guy with camera too. I think there's also a misunderstanding. I think for maybe some other people, that the poor guy with camera not always is necessarily that guy. It is sometimes someone who's just struggling because of his own limitations socially, and he's awkward and doesn't know how to really engage, but he's got this creative drive and he's interested. I actually have one, and he just is machine gun with his camera, so I'm kind of coaching him to kind of look a little bit more and have slow
because you can present you can easily present as a guy with camera by being shy and having a camera, and that presents as the same kind of it can present as the same kind of creeper as just a guy that's like, oh, I don't even have a memory card in my camera, but I'm here, right? Yeah. So
I think that I do get the guys that are shy and trying to grow. I'm all about trying to coach those kinds of individuals that are at that level and up to the next. So I think for models out there that listen to this too, is to also realize that some of them are not always guy with camera. A lot of them are, but sometimes it's just that they're a really, really shy personality. Maybe they're more technically minded and they're just more comfortable with numbers, and that's why they love all the numbers with their camera. And they're trying to figure out their creativity, and they don't know how to tell you how to pose and stuff like that, and they're just quiet.
Yeah, but are you filtering those guys out? I mean, because you as a former model, you should be able to spot them a mile away.
Yeah, right? I do actually, and so I am filtering out the true guy with camera, and I'm able to recognize the guy that's just got where he's at with his challenges and his struggles just by watching him. And I actually very much gauge every attendee to see where they're at. I have actually a dynamic where second and then the beginners go last, so they can see as a beginner how each person with more skill works with posing the model differently, or their own creative ideas that they want to generate with the model. And everyone really loves this format because they're finding it very, very beneficial. There's other exercises that I do for tips and tricks and techniques to get you kind of thinking outside of your norm and challenging you. But some people, they show up, they know what they want, they don't necessarily aren't coming to me for the coaching, which is fine. I guess right now I'm kind of deciding whether I want to filter them out. I understand the opportunity that I create is really, really nice with the content, so that they're there for that dynamic. So I'm balancing.
Those folks are just using, just to be clear, those folks that show up aren't using you for the education. They're like, you're like a set coordinator. Like, here's a model, here's a location. Hey, all I have to do is pay this money, and I don't have to worry about finding a model or a location. I just show up with my camera, and I'm good to go, right?
Yeah, they're utilizing me for my my conception and all my pre-production that I've invested into the shoot session. Yeah. So because I'm doing stuff that I feel like what you're kind of getting from my group shoots and my sessions is also my vision and my style with my photography. And as I branch out and explore different things, it's like I'm inviting everyone else to come along and join me, and stuff like that. So, and then I'm putting out questionnaires too. There's a lot of people that are wanting to, this was model photography focused, but in that we are going to start practicing like wedding portraits. They've asked to do couple sessions to practice with models, which was not necessarily where I was going to head, but I can deliver that because I know how to do a lot of the pre-production stuff and networking and finding people to produce that kind of session for people to have the practice.
Yeah, you got a ton to offer here, and I want to wrap up and get to a couple of other things. You've been in this industry for a while, and you've probably noticed some trends on how work is displayed online, and like you and I were talking about before we started rolling here, the influence of social media to sort of the homogeny of looks and styles online. What do you think about that? I mean, do you see that? Do you see social media sort of making everything sort of the same flavor versus spicy over here and bland over there? What do you think?
So there's definitely been a lot of changes. I mean, back in the day, I remember when I started, my first website was on GeoCities.
I remember. So was mine. So was mine.
And we were posting our images on LiveJournal and MySpace before Facebook ever existed. And, One Model Place existed before Model Mayhem. And people were posting on One Model Place for a few years. And then that entire community migrated over to One Model Place. Because I guess they like the format better. And then Model Mayhem still exists. It is not, I think, as viable today as it used to be, but it's still a good resource if you have the patience to filter through the quality levels. I think
where is the party at now? Is the party at Model Mayhem or One Model Place? Or I think the
party's at Facebook and Instagram, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, and I say unfortunately because I think that your Model Mayhem's really great because it's a community driven for specifically photography and models. And there's a lot of other stuff on Facebook and Instagram. One of the other problems that I still kind of have with Instagram is the square composition format. And I just don't personally like it because you're kind of cropping your images, or I just don't see composition necessarily that way with my photography.
They changed that though. You can now do non-square now.
Well, you can, but then it makes your image even smaller, right? It's even tinier. And it's okay that it's a mobile first platform for Instagram, but I wish that they would do a little bit more with the desktop version. But I am finding a majority of I do still post a casting call on Model Mayhem, and I still poke around on there every once in a while. But a majority of what I am getting these days is through Facebook, actually. I get more through Facebook than I do from Instagram. A lot of the times people will either I'm talking to them on Model Mayhem or I'm talking to them on Facebook, and then we end up converting over to Instagram, interestingly enough. And I do message some people on Instagram as well and reach out to them if I happen upon their portfolio. But my big problem is with Instagram is there's no location, searching. You see people have to tag their work by location. So it makes it, for me, I think, a bit of a challenge, and I kind of miss the Model Mayhem format where you can just do a local search or broaden your search to a location if you're traveling to somewhere and go, hey, I'm gonna be on the East Coast of the United States, and I'm gonna be visiting New York and I want to see about like some of my free time networking with a local talent there, and it's not very easy to do that on Instagram, and you can do it on Facebook a bit, but I think there's that key limitation.
Yeah. No, Shiva, to wrap this up, so you're Bay Area based in the San Francisco Bay Area here, Silicon Valley-ish, and you're doing workshops. If someone wants to engage you in a workshop, how do they do that? But you're also doing one-on-one coaching as well, right?
I am available to that. I actually have had a few people that are approaching me for one-on-one sessions, but 80% of it is through the group shoots and the group sessions that I'm offering. And eventually I hope that those will grow out of the Bay Area as well. I mean, they will be based in the Bay Area. From San Francisco to San Jose, we go over to Oakland as well sometimes, depending on what the cool locations. But in regards to landscape stuff, not everything is right here, although California is amazing and it always keeps me so busy. I would like to get people to be interested in doing more adventure travel kind of stuff with me as I continue to grow, because one of my biggest skill sets from being a model and a photographer is I'm really good at doing all the collaboration and the production. And so I'm taking that talent that I've cultivated over the years and being able to make it, a cool experience accessible to others. So that's where I'm kind of growing with that.
I have a request then. Yes. In that light, like I said before, just got back from Puerto Rico. You have to do a workshop in Puerto Rico. So, it's one of your travel destination workshops, storms notwithstanding when it's clear.
Yes,
there,
yes. I really love being out. I mean, my big focus right now is I like working in the studio, but I love landscape and I love bringing models to the landscape. And that's just my favorite. I like the challenge of being able to play with light and do what I want and control it in the studio. But I love being outside. So, we should definitely go there.
I love it. Cool. All right. We'll talk about that offline.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I want to do some stuff with the national parks. I want to see who's interested in kind of, we'll still continue to maintain the local stuff. It's also available for people who are going to be coming to the Bay Area. Like there's, maybe a East Coast photographer that's going to be visiting San Francisco for whatever reasons. And I actually had someone from London find my group, and he has been following because he travels here for work a great deal. So he wants to come when he's on one of his business trips,
Nice.
So these are available to people who are traveling to the Bay Area as well.
I love it. I love it. Cool. So if people want to book you, they want to work with you, or check out your work, all that stuff. You have a number of places online where people can go. Where would you like them to start?
So my brand is All Shiva, which is pretty much where most of my handles are, everywhere you can find me. I'm All Shiva on Instagram and Model Mayhem and Flickr and 500 Pics. I'm All Shiva Sharifi on Facebook and Twitter. And the dynamic beauty photography is a really long link. So I've made that available. If you go to my Instagram, you'll find the link there for it.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on everything you're doing, and thank you. I think you're like we were talking about before. You're providing. It sounds weird to say a unique service, but you're the experience that you bring. Both from being a model and an accomplished photographer, and then the willingness to share your knowledge with people that may not be able to, or just too shy to be able to book these models themselves, and then find the locations, and then have someone there to instruct them.
It's a lot of legwork. Yeah, it's a lot of legwork, but I really enjoy doing it, and then I want to be able to help other people be able to go independent with their stuff.
Awesome. Well, Shiva, thank you so much for coming on This Week in Photo, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate having the time to be here. Thank you.
All right. See you soon. This is TWiP.